Hello everyone, this is the Iron Marshal speaking, and today I will be presenting you with my own little analysis about the death penalty. Now let me warn you all in advance, this video will cover some sensitive topics, so if you don't feel comfortable with it, feel free to click off the video. Now with that in mind, let us proceed. Now, as the name suggests, the death penalty is the ultimate sanction that the state can place upon an individual who has broken its laws, often to the most severe and horrendous degree. Now, this policy has attracted a good deal of controversy over the years, and with good reason. Giving the state the power to take a person's life from them is always going to attract a good deal of controversy. And this is regardless of the crimes that the individual in question has committed. The opposition to the death penalty tends to be based more around the potential of the death penalty to be abused and the general precedent that it sets. Now, with this in mind, we need to look into some numbers to get an idea of the scale of the death penalty. According to Amnesty International, there were 1,153 executions in 16 countries in 2023. In that same year, 27,687 people were under the death sentence across the globe. Now, this might not seem like the most gigantic number when you consider the sheer number of people who have committed various different crimes across the globe, but keep in mind that the opposition to the death penalty is based more around the precedent that it sets. Each of these people are human beings, and their life has value. And regardless of the crimes that they may have committed, taking their life from them is going to attract a fair bit of attention when it's done by the state. Now, we need to keep in mind that not every state applies the death penalty equally. Some countries have broader definitions of what offenses can be punished by death. Other countries abuse it more than others. Now, if you want a good example of where the death penalty is applied pretty broadly, look no further than China. According to the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty, the Chinese Penal Code in 1979 had 74 offenses punishable by death. This was later reduced to 68 in 1997, 55 in 2011, and 46 in 2015. Now, this points to a general trend of reducing the scope of the death penalty. And this is in countries that have fallen short of outright abolishing the death penalty. At present, the abolitionist nations far outnumber the retentionist ones. However, this hasn't stopped the death penalty from being broadly applied in those countries that do still have it. China is a particularly egregious example. Every year, it is estimated that thousands and thousands of people are executed in that country. Exact numbers are hard to come by for obvious reasons. It's communist China, and I highly doubt that they're going to release figures that have the potential to discredit their entire country. And to speak nothing of the global humiliation that would entail. Another egregious example would be Iran, which had 853 confirmed executions in 2023, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. This vastly dwarfs countries like the United States, which tends to feature pretty prominently in the death penalty debate. Now, with this in mind, you may wonder, why would a nation implement such a horrific policy? Well, there's a few reasons. One of them is the idea of retribution, an eye for an eye. The death penalty, generally speaking, is applied to those who have committed the most horrendous crimes, such as murder, terrorism, treason. And it is argued that such severe crimes can only be properly avenged by taking the perpetrator's life. Think about it. If someone takes a life, what would be the best way to enact justice? Some would argue that life in prison without parole would be the best course of action. However, those who support the death penalty say that's not enough. Taking their life from them is the best way to avenge the person whose life they took. Now, this eye for an eye philosophy is a bit dodgy. One of the chief counter arguments to this, used by opponents to the death penalty, is that an eye for an eye leaves the world blind. And to a degree, that is true. On the other hand, you also have to consider the fact that those who suffer the death penalty can never commit more crimes. I mean, how can you? According to Lee Anderson, the former Conservative Party deputy chairman, quote, "Nobody has ever committed a crime after being executed." Harsh thing to say, but it's true. It's not exactly proven whether or not the death penalty serves to reduce crime, but you can definitely see why people would think that it has a deterrent effect. There's less of a chance that you might commit a crime if you know there's a risk you might get your life taken from you because of it. Now, it should be noted that a lot of Western nations have abolished it. Actually, the majority of them. Some chief outliers tend to be nations like Japan or the United States. The UK, for instance, abolished the death penalty in 1965, and France abolished it in 1981. Another chief point of debate regarding the death penalty is the method of execution. One of the problems with the death penalty is that it's often considered cruel or inhumane, and this is with good reason. Various countries use different methods of execution. Saudi Arabia, for example, uses beheading. I don't think I really need to explain to you how horrific that is. Other nations that retain the death penalty have switched to more humane methods. In the United States, for instance, you have seen the emergence of lethal injection, which is comparatively more humane compared to something like beheading or hanging, but it's still taking a person's life from them. Another huge problem is, what if a person has been wrongfully convicted? What if that person is innocent of the crime for which they have received the death penalty? There is always the risk that an innocent person could end up on the chopping block, literally and figuratively. And there have been cases of innocent people who have been executed for crimes they did not commit. And unlike a prison sentence or a fine or something like that, the death penalty cannot be reversed when it is carried out. And that is arguably the greatest tragedy of this policy. Despite this, those countries that still retain the death penalty generally see a broad base of support for that policy. According to the Pew Research Center, 60% of US adults favored the death penalty. And keep in mind, this is despite the fact that 78% of those same adults say that there is a risk that an innocent person will be put to death. With these figures in mind, it generally appears that those who support the death penalty view the possibility of an innocent person losing their life as an acceptable risk. With these things in mind, it's very difficult to defend a policy like the death penalty, although when you really look into it, you can at least understand to some degree why a person would support it. Crime needs to be treated harshly, but there is a point where it passes into sheer brutality on the part of the state. And we need to consider the future for our children if we want to deal with crime in the best way possible. We cannot afford to give the state a broad power that it has the potential to abuse. And that's something to keep in mind. This is the Iron Marshal signing off. Don't forget to like and subscribe the video for more content.